So one question to ask, do you want to take a break? No? Okay, then I will ask Professor Fan Yuan to give her talk. Yeah. Come on.
I didn't prepare a talk. Okay. Victor is a friend of mine, so he wanted to give me 2 minutes. And actually, we were having dinner together. He was asking me whether, about the role of BBC, why people want challenge BBC as a media monopoly, the issue. And I would just, start from here. I would say that in terms of ownership, BBC is a public media owned by the British people. So the accountability and transparency are integrated within its organizational governance. Well, I can stand here, okay? And it has to face the pressure from the Congress. I'm sure the people here all know about that. And as far as I know, the BBC has a well-established detailed rule about how to run the program in a non-partisan way. Okay. I think in contrast, just as our 3 excellent panelists already talked about, the public media in Taiwan is still struggling its way to be non-partisan. At the same time, the private market of media is under the threat of media monopoly. So we really need to think about the issue and agree with them to reform the reform of the infrastructure, and which can take into account both the public and the private media environment in Taiwan. And I'm not sure whether you are aware of that. Actually, in Taiwan, many people are debating whether the anti-China sentiment is legitimate or not in these protests. I would say that whether you see China as a threat or an opportunity, I would say that the media, the freedom of media actually is at the core of democracy. And I'm sure it is also the common value shared by all the Taiwanese, Hong Kongese, and as far as I know, many Chinese people. Okay, that's just my comment. Thank you.
So now we open the floor to questions, and I will ask our panelists to answer it. So who wants to start it? Okay. Please stand up and state your name. Thank you.
My name is Bo Xiang, and I'm doing comparative law at the University of Oxford. And maybe following on Professor Fan Yuan's comparison, BBC, and maybe we'll compare BBC and Wang Zhongbu, and we'll find why people are angry about what Mr. Tsai Ing-wen has done. It's not because he has monopoly or everything. It's just because the way he do the news, the way he report the news is just not right, and he's not respecting this industry. He doesn't have the sort of the expertise as well. But if you think about that, what if Mr. Tsai Ing-wen is not such a arrogant or pro-China rich man? He actually knows how to,
I have to warn you. Allegation, accusation.
Okay, not a pro-China, and what if he does these news properly? And do we care? Do we really care about monopoly? And then we come to the issue that why China factor? We cannot leave this factor away. And Monique talked about depoliticize this issue and use these 5 brilliant solutions, which is very good, but they are not related to this China factor. But what I want to say and what I want to ask is that can we really solve this problem without concerning about China factor? And because China factor is, well, in my opinion, what triggered all these movements, because it's emotionally so strong that we saw these comments and we are so upset about what he's done.
Okay. So, which one of you want to answer it, Gary? No.
Well, the only comment I would make is that I think you're right to a point that you can separate ownership from the way that they would go about their professional journalistic duties and functions. And if you have an owner who is not hands-on in the media empire that he controls, then that may be power to the good. But it doesn't remove the fact that there are very strong commercial interests that are being pushed by that one person or the organisation that he represents. And it does represent a lack of diversity of opinion and access to alternative information. So I think we should still be worried about it.
So can I ask you, like over here in Britain, every newspaper, behind them is a big company who invests the money. But why you don't see these companies try to influence it?
Influence what?
The press report.
Because we have very clear, kind of non-constitutional guidelines. I think it's well entrenched that there is this idea of what the media should be doing and separating ownership. But at the same time, we do have problems. I mean, the idea that these companies don't involve themselves, I think, would be to present British media as a panacea, as a utopia where we don't have these kind of problems. You only have to look at the history of the press, media, and government relations over the past 20, 30 years, and you will see that these kind of problems do surface. You know, the way that the Leveson inquiry was talking about the relationship between the Murdoch empire and the government and parties and the state, including the police, demonstrates that they do have serious problems. It is something that is inevitable, I think, when you have a liberal democracy and a market in the media space, that you will get this concentration of ownership, and you will get editors who want to push their own agendas. It goes right back to the 19th century in Britain. It goes back to the 19th century in America as well. But as long as you have a plurality of media owners and organisations representing a diversity of viewpoints, then it can somehow ameliorate some of those problems. It doesn't solve it, but it flattens it out a little bit.
Okay. Who's next? Oh.
Well, actually,
Let me save you for later on, okay? Yeah, please.
Thank you. My name is Nils Hahn. I'm a lecturer at Soas in Berwick. I was just intrigued by what I heard that the BBC was considered as a public-owned media. There are a lot of criticism about BBC, that it's actually under political control, and even the head of the trust was the former colonial governor of Hong Kong, which I think in itself is interesting to note. And again, it linked into the whole notion of democracy. What is democracy? Is it talk about liberal democracy? Because in that case, there are views considering liberal democracy as being a form of dictatorship of a particular ruling class. So that could be class view-based. That's another interesting point. Finally, freedom of expression. There's very interesting examples in the United States from the McCarthyism. When the left was quite strong in the United States, labor unions were moving forward. They launched a campaign of McCarthyism, the Red Scare, after they basically removed any opposition, that they could say, well, you're free to say what you want. There was nobody left to say anything. Or those who were left would not dare to say anything. People were being expelled from the country, they were being fired for their positions, they couldn't hold public offices. So I think this is important to remember when we're also comparing democracy and media in the United States.
So which one of you want to answer it? Okay, Minye, do you want to answer?
Well, I think I'll answer part of it actually in terms of the BBC's. I think the thing about, also actually made me think about Taiwan's own public television. And actually, I personally don't think the governor himself, the board of governors, is actually, I think it's the selection process and also that position itself actually will then provide structural constraint to this particular role. And so it's not to say BBC has no problem. However, when there's problems, there are also public scrutiny and public debate. And actually also BBC itself will have to actually reveal all these problems and try to be accountable to the public. So I think it's actually, I would think it's more important to have that infrastructure. And I think, just a little comment about Taiwan's public television itself. Taiwan's public television, I think, actually has done a lot of good things. But at the moment, sometimes just spend too much effort or exhausts all the resources and effort and look into one particular individual who has to be perfect and ideal, and you're just never going to find it. Hence, you never actually having this board that everybody going to agree on. But I think actually to have a system to select the board, and then let the board actually do their public duties, to actually provide a service actually can be scrutinized. I think that's probably the way to move on. And I think so in that sense, I would think actually Taiwan's public television debate do have a lot to take reference from how BBC is run. Not that it was never any problems, but actually when there are problems, there will be also solution structures to be transparent and to be discussed about and to help people to move on. Hence BBC continue to be the most trusted institution by the citizens. And I think that itself is what public service broadcasting is about. And originally actually was trying to go back to that China factor thing. And I think I would just, because precisely like you said, it's an emotional issue, that's why I think at first I hesitate to try to tackle it. But I will hope actually we take this anti-media monopoly beyond one individual or one particular case. And I think the China factor, I would think actually should be Taiwan's media literacy to be sufficient enough for the readers to be able to detect rather than try to limit. I think the more important thing actually for Taiwan to establish a particular media structure that can safeguard its own press freedom. So then actually under this structure, Taiwan will be able to help its own media to vibrant, to be pluralistic, rather than try to limit business and other activities. I think actually that's my view.
Okay, thank you.